Hello and welcome to Juliet and Lucy's Quiet Leadership Revolution, the podcast for senior and aspiring leaders who want to make their voice heard and their impact felt through thoughtful, reflective, confident leadership. I'm Juliet Corbett. I'm an executive coach and strategist, and I work one-to-one with senior leaders, guiding them to find their strategic focus, empower their teams, and regain control over their time.
And I'm Lucy Gower. I'm a facilitator, trainer and coach, and I empower leaders to build their happy, confident and high-performing teams. In this episode today, we're talking about our awareness of and our responses to stress. Now, I know that a lot of the leaders that I work with, whether we talk about it in terms of stress or in terms of overwhelm or in terms of being really busy, there's this underlying tension, which today I'm going to label as stress. And the first step with anything is having some self-awareness about what's happening before we can make any sort of decision about how to manage that. So this episode today, I'm really excited actually to hear more from you, Juliet, about a specific model that can help to kind of categorize some of this and give us pathways forward to be able to identify the sort of my response to stress and then how I deal with it. So Juliet, tell us more.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of coaches will use frameworks or models in their work, and sometimes those models really land consistently with almost every client they work with. And this is one of those models for me. It's one of those models which helps us to understand the thinking patterns or the thought patterns that might have become default in ourselves based on assumptions, beliefs, kind of the experiences we've had through our career, through our life. And the idea is that those thought patterns then drive behavior patterns. So the thought drives the behavior, and that when we're under stress, there are a couple of these thought patterns that can really they almost go into overdrive and they start to determine our behavior without us noticing. It's not a conscious reaction, it's like an unconscious reaction to the stress and the pressure that we're feeling under. So I'm really excited to be sharing this model. It's called drivers. It comes from an area of psychology research called transactional analysis. It started back in the 1950s, has been evolved and shifted and changed since then. And so I'm going to talk us through the 5 drivers that we experience. The one thing I will say up front is this is not one of those models which is based on massive amounts of empirical data. This is a really helpful framework for you to have a think about what resonates with you. Can you notice anything about yourself as you listen to us talking through these 5 different drivers? And if you don't find it helpful, just reject it. That is fine. What I find really interesting, and the reason actually, Lucy, I wanted to share it here, is because everyone I've talked to about this, I was going to say almost everyone, but actually I think it is everyone, has found something in this conversation that has enabled them to deal with stress better. Yeah. So it feels like I want to be sharing it with everybody.
Absolutely. And actually, as we've been talking about it, it's such food for thought and a great conversation opener about, you know, as a leader, your own view on the world, but it's a tool that you can use with your teams as well. And it's a tool that perhaps you can use with your teams to open a conversation, but perhaps as we're talking, there might be people that you're thinking about in your team, you're like, that's what happens. That's what's going on there. Yeah. And you'll have some tools to help you to manage that. So Juliet.
Yeah. Okay. With no further ado. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to do it the same way as I do it with clients. I'm going to read through all 5 very, very, very briefly, and I'm not going to describe them. And maybe as you're listening, you can just have a think about which ones immediately resonate. And then I'm going to go back through and just give you a couple of more sentences to describe each one. Does that sound okay, Lucy?
That's brilliant. And Gary the dog's there.
Coaching you live on.
Yeah, no,
I'm coaching Gary too. Okay, good, excellent. Okay, so here are the 5. The first one is be perfect. The second one, please others. The third one is be strong. The fourth one is try hard. And the 5th and final one is hurry up. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm trying to slow my voice down so that people can take it in as I'm mentioning it. So the first 2 of these actually have got a lot more recognition, a lot more cultural recognition than the others. So be perfect. We've all heard about perfectionism. Some of us might self-describe as a perfectionist. And there's a fairly good knowledge about the pros and cons of being perfect, being the driving force. The way it might sound inside your voice, the thought pattern is, if I'm feeling really stressed, I'll be okay so long as I'm perfect. So it's all about staying okay. I'm going to be okay as long as everything's perfect, as long as I can do things perfectly. I'm going to be okay. So it's that pressure to get things right. Sometimes it's also related to focusing on the flaws rather than the progress that we're making. So we're looking to see what might not be right, and those things feel much bigger to us than they might do to others. And it can lead to people being quite critical of themselves as well. If they're not perfect, then they're critical of themselves. And as we know, nobody and nothing is
no
ever
such
perfect.
thing, is there? There's no
No,
such thing. Yeah.
exactly. So that's a pretty well-known one. The second one is please others. This is often described in kind of cultural terms as being people pleaser. If you're a people pleaser, then you tend to be driven to please others. It means that you're putting quite a lot of value on the fact that you want everyone else to be happy around you. And then for your behavior is driven wanting to do things for other people to keep them happy. And that normally results in people finding it quite hard to say no to other people, taking too much work on themselves, too many tasks on themselves, and sometimes really putting themselves not just second or third down the rankings, but at the bottom of that ranking in terms of who matters, in terms of the behavior that they're going to do. And obviously that leads to exhaustion, absolute exhaustion, and under recognition of what you're contributing as well.
And I would wonder whether that leads to sort of dips in confidence if you're putting yourself at the bottom of the list of what's important for you to be able to do your best work. From a lot of the work that I do around confidence, there's surely got to be a correlation there.
Yes, definitely. And one of the underpinning beliefs behind please others is I'm not as valuable as others, or I don't matter as much as others. And so if you've got that limiting belief underpinning this, even though in times of stress, this behavior might become default, even under normal times when you're not particularly stressed, it's also not going to be a particularly pleasant way of being, because if you're constantly devaluing what you're contributing and the value that you have in a team or a family or community, it's not going to be particularly conducive with consistently high levels of confidence. Yeah, exactly. So the third one, be strong. This is a really interesting one. So the way that we tend to talk about it today is about being incredibly independent, not wanting to ask for help, not wanting to show to anybody that we're incapable of completing something completely solo, wanting to be really handling life and look to others as if we're really handling life. Interestingly, historically, because this framework started in the 1950s in an environment in which showing emotions was seen as not being strong, the original work talks a lot about hiding emotions and not showing emotions, not sharing that with others. Personally, and some academics might disagree with me, but personally, I think that that's shifted, that actually we no longer necessarily equate be strong with have no emotion or show no emotion. So for some people, it will still show up that way, but it's more common that it's showing up as I've got to do this alone. I've got to be strong for those around me. I've got to continue independently. As you can imagine, Lucy, that leads to a pretty much high level of stress, because if it's all on your own shoulders, life looks pretty unbearable when it's stressful.
And also for other people within your team, if you're not letting them in to help you as well. So I can recall a time when I worked within a team and we all knew that our leader was having quite a tough time, and we felt really disempowered that they wouldn't let us in and help in any shape or form. It was very much like, everything's great, I'm fine, and we knew it wasn't, and it eroded trust, and it made us feel not disempowered, and that wasn't a great team dynamic either. I love this model, and it's about you as an individual, but the ripple effect on others will look different for each of these drivers, I would imagine. And that's the one that I definitely have first-hand experience of how that feels.
Yeah, and what we can talk about in a minute is it's possible to have multiple drivers as an individual, and then your drivers are interacting with the drivers of other people around you if you're all in the same stressful situation, or you're all experiencing pressure, even if it's coming from different directions and stress. it leads to some pretty complex dynamics. But what you've described there is exactly true, that these influence our own behavior, and that behavior is then observed by others. And even though it's reflecting automatic thought processes that we have, what other people observe is the behavior, and they don't necessarily know why that behavior is shutting them out, not trusting them, not allowing them to help, not allowing them to give emotional support as well. Yeah. So the fourth one is called try hard. And this is about effort being more important than results. So it's if I just keep trying, if I just put the effort in, if I just keep working really hard at this project, this thing, it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay as long as I try hard. And that can result in people keeping pushing, even if something just isn't working, because the idea of it not working permanently isn't really what's important. What's important is I'm just going to keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
It can sometimes mean that people don't finish projects. So they'll continue to work on, they're working on a piece of writing and they just continue to edit and edit and edit and edit, and edit, and they never submit the piece of writing to the blog or the publisher or whatever it might be. So it can play out in that way. And the key thing, though, is that it's all about the effort rather than the outcome.
And that's interesting. And I'm guessing that, say, if you have try hard as one of your drivers and perfect, that they like you're creating a loop where I'm going to keep trying hard. I'm not going to publish that blog until it's perfect. And actually, that loop's never going to end, is it? Which is going to be stressful and exacerbate.
Very, very stressful. Yeah. Very, very stressful. So what's really interesting is the way that multiple of these can play out. And even some of them, so those two seem quite natural bedfellows in the sense that we kind of understand, okay, if I keep trying and I've got to be perfect, so I never complete, those feel like they're going to whip themselves up into a flurry of thoughts that are driving behaviors that are inevitably going to be stressful. Yeah. What's really interesting as well is you can take almost what seem like contradictory of these and combine them, and they create really interesting effects, which I'm going to talk that through in a moment. So the final one, this is the one that has affected me massively through my entire career, and I only realized my entire life, and I really realized relatively recently, is hurry up. So this is where there is an additional benefit or value that comes from doing something fast. It means you might still be perfect and hurry up, which is one of those combinations which can be quite difficult. I know it kind of feeds quite a negative, stressful thought process. But it's all about rushing. The quantity is more important than the quality of what I'm doing. And also it can lead to being quite impatient with people who are not as fast as you. So when it comes to hurry up, it might be that you're capable of actually operating at a fairly decent quality whilst hurrying up at the same time, especially if you're doing something where you've got mastery or you've got a particular skill set. You're quite impatient with those around you who aren't able to keep up with that process. That was a big one for me. And I think the thing that I noticed was when I first came across this model, it was kind of 3 or 4 years ago, it was towards the end of the pandemic, and I realized that I've always known I have a bit of a please others driver, which early in my leadership career, I realized I needed to have some kind of counteracting internal voice that would help me to not always please others, because leadership is quite difficult to please others and be a leader. What I hadn't realized was that, especially during the pandemic, my hurry up driver went into massive overdrive, to the extent that I still remember literally saying to myself under my voice, I was doing some stuff in the kitchen and I had work to do and I had kids at the kitchen table trying to teach them schoolwork and all this. And I actually remember saying to myself, I just need to go faster. I'll be okay if I can just go faster. And then realizing sort of 18 months, 2 years later, oh my goodness, that was the internal thought process I had for the whole of that pandemic period. No wonder I was feeling pretty stressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lucy, are you willing to share with us the ones that might land with you?
Of course.
That feel relevant to you?
Let's be honest, they all feel relevant. As you were talking, I'm like, I can see that. But if I needed to prioritize, I would say that my ones are be strong. So I do ask for help, and I know that takes quite a lot of resource in order to be able to do it. But this piece around, being independent, and this probably springs from maybe not even work experiences, but this feeling of if you want something done, do it yourself. Sits. I'm not saying that's a value. That's an experience, that a learned experience. And then I think the other one is that sits with that is around pleasing others. I want everyone listening to this podcast to get something great from it, and it's to be helpful. And there's something about, oh, I want to be helpful. I want to help people develop and learn in a different way. I don't know if they exacerbate each other. And
Yeah.
try hard. I feel like I'm a recovering perfectionist. So the try hard and perfection, yeah, I've experienced that, but that's not the thing that is probably causing me more stress right now. I'll go be strong and please others.
Yeah. So when you think about those in combination, there might be some experience of a tendency around if you're being strong, so you're being really independent, maybe you are now you are learning to ask for help, which is great. We're going to talk about in a minute what we do about these, kind of almost like an antidote for each of these. But back in times when maybe you found it harder to ask for help because you hadn't recognized this was the skill that you wanted to develop. And so if you're not asking for help and you're pleasing others, that can often lead to people feeling quite unrecognized, quite stretched, quite exhausted. You've got that experience of I'm serving everybody else. And actually service is an important value that might underpin some of these. I'm serving everyone else. Who's helping me? Who's serving me? And you can see how a collection of beliefs, values, experiences might have led to be strong and please others being quite prominent for you. And under normal times, they're balanced by everything else, but left unchecked in times of stress or pressure or overwhelm, those automatic behaviors and responses can kick in, and then it can be detrimental to our ability to cope with the actual stress that's caused it.
Yeah, it really resonates and makes a lot of sense. So my question, I suppose, because I want to please others, what can we do about it?
Yes. Okay. So step number one is always to be aware of what it is that is particularly prominent for you, and that these might change over time. This is not like a diagnosis. This is something that might shift and change over time. It's not the only thing about your personality. Obviously, your beliefs, your values, you may not fit into some of these categories, and that's absolutely fine. But if as you're listening, you're recognizing something about yourself, is to kind of be able to recognize that as enhancing your self-awareness. And then the second thing we can do is to create, in the terminology from the kind of transactional analysis world where this driver's ideas come from, they're called allowers. I tend to call them antidotes because it kind of gives you a sense of I've got an antidote to this. Is a phrase or a belief that you could start to really try to inhabit. Right. And we know with beliefs that the first step to changing your beliefs is to look at what is the belief you want to hold, and then to start telling yourself it's true, acting as if it's true. Now, there might be reasons why that doesn't happen easily, and that might be another episode we can talk about that, because there'll be other things that can cause you to get stuck with that. But it's the first thing to try, is to what is the opposite that I can believe. So if you think about those antidotes for be perfect, the classic antidote is I'm good enough. So you're reframing when this is perfect that I can finish, or when I need to be perfect, to I need to be good enough, or when this is good enough, I can submit this project is completed. So it's progress more than flawlessness.
Progress over perfection. And another phrase that I've used for myself is good enough is good enough.
Yeah, I use that one as well. Good enough is good enough. And reminding myself, probably no one else is going to notice the extra little 1% that I might be able to squeeze out of this if I improve it even more. Good enough is good enough. You're going to have the impact you want with the work that you've done so far to get it out in the world. And by not pressing finish, by not getting it out there, not submitting it, not doing that final stage that's holding you back, then no one benefits from the work you're doing.
And there's very little scope for learning if you don't ship the thing, whatever that is, the The blog,
Yes.
the
Yeah,
piece
yeah,
of
yeah.
work, when you put it out into the
Yeah.
world, you get the opportunity to get feedback. Now, I'm guessing that if you're a perfectionist, the idea of feedback, unless it's that's perfect, is quite tough. So there's probably another
Yeah.
episode where we talk about that a little bit more. But certainly some of the things that I've done to overcome this is good enough, is good enough. If I want to be perfect, ultimately, I have to put it out there in order to get feedback, not necessarily to make it perfect, but to keep learning and improving. And
Yeah.
that sits very much with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
innovation framework.
Yeah. And for me, I think part of it as well is if I've put something out into the world because I had to kind of force myself to, knowing it wasn't perfect, actually that makes it slightly easier for me to receive
Yeah,
feedback because actually I know it's not
yeah,
perfect and I'm still putting it out in the world, and therefore I get something back as that's the thing I can improve next
yeah,
time. Whereas if I actually think it is perfect and then put it out into the world, that makes feedback very
yeah, okay,
challenging because it's
yeah,
challenging your identity.
yeah,
And if you take this back to the roots, if you are challenging, I'm only okay if it's perfect, and someone tells you it's not perfect, that means you're not
mm,
okay. And that is really challenging the self-belief and the confidence and the identity that you held
yeah.
about yourself.
And that can have a catastrophic impact, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So almost like the antidote means that we can receive that feedback, and
yeah,
it's the antidote against the negative reactions to the feedback later as
yeah.
well. So thinking about please others, pretty obvious here, please yourself. And when I'm talking to people about this one, I actually challenge people and say, look, I want you to do something selfish today. And I use that word selfish intentionally because it pushes people so far beyond what they're comfortable with that actually it's almost like we're breaking out of the cell, the jail that they've created for themselves. And the rationale behind it is you can only really serve others if you help yourself first,
Mm. Oxygen
put the
mask.
oxygen mask on
Yeah,
you before your children, etc., etc. And it's that sense of you matter too. And if you don't value yourself, it's like, I mean, that's that belief of self-value, then no one else, it's not that no one else is going to, but you're not going to encourage others to value you unless you can value
yeah,
yourself first. So please yourself is the opposite belief.
yeah.
Thinking about be strong, it's okay to ask for help. Pretty obvious. You mentioned about that earlier. And it is around reframing that feeling of that being okay. And sometimes it still feels
Mm-hmm.
hard, and that's okay, but still doing it. And that help might be practical help. I need someone to help me with a particular skill set I don't have, full knowledge on a particular new piece of legislation or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Or it might be emotional
Yeah,
help. So you're showing some vulnerability here as well.
yeah. And
The
I was
antidote,
going to
sorry,
say,
carry on.
and the more you do it as a be strong, as a person that has a be strong driver, the more you do it, and the
Mm,
more you can do it on smaller things, the more able you are to do it more and on other things that are perhaps more significant.
yeah, I don't do this well. I think be strong is probably, I think please others, hurry up, be strong has been my order for me. So having realized early on that please others wasn't really going to work for me career wise, having realized more belatedly that hurry up is an automatic response, I think be strong is also something I really struggle with. And I think that for me, it shows up around asking my family for
Mm.
help. Actually, I'm not too bad at work,
Yeah,
but it's asking family to step up and to be able to support me that I have had, yeah, had to really try at
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
that makes sense.
Moving on to try hard. So the antidote for this one is do it. In the sense that if try hard is all about putting the effort in, you need to actually ship it. You need to actually say, and you're going to complete it. And it's not just about trying, it's about actually just doing it. So that means shifting or giving up or changing tack completely if it's not working. It means actually submitting it if you're just tinkering around the edges and you're a bit worried about what happens next. And it actually means making sure that you're recognizing that maybe there'll be an outcome that you can deliver, some results that you can deliver that don't require hard work. And that's okay.
Yeah,
It's not about the effort you put in, it's about the impact that you
yeah,
have. So just do it, kind of a Nike
yeah, yeah.
style response to
And
that
that
one.
actually putting in 100 hours doesn't equate to your best work. It might be that 10 hours, I'm just making up numbers here, still equates to
Yeah.
the best work. I've got a personal
Yeah.
problem with the word try. So yeah, do it or don't want to go all Yoda, but like do it or don't do it. But what does try, when if a friend says, oh, I'll try and be there on time, does that mean they're going to be on time? No, it means that they are going to be late.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
try is a weak language that I have a personal problem with.
So people who have this driver do tend to use the word try quite a lot, and maybe recognizing that that is probably a thought pattern that's
Yeah,
driving
yeah,
automatic behavior for them, rather than just a turn of phrase.
yeah,
Potentially, it might even go
yeah,
deeper, which is quite
yeah,
interesting.
definitely.
Um, and then finally, the one that I've really struggled with: hurry up, take your time. So slowing down, recognizing when a slower process actually improves the output. Um, and making sure that you're focusing on quality as well. If this is combined with I hurry up to the extent that I'm actually not worrying about quality at all,
Yeah,
then potentially it's taking your time to
yeah,
make sure the quality is there. And actually, Lucy, as one of the reflections for me, people always say that the thoughts we put out into the world, or in our case, the podcast topics that we pick, are sometimes the things we need to hear ourselves the
mm-hmm.
most. And I think my slight obsession with the idea of slowing down to have greater impact is rooted in me trying to overcome this hurry up driver.
All makes sense now. Yes,
It all
I
makes
can.
sense now.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. And I think the thing that I'd say around that is that obviously Juliet and I know each other in real life, not in just podcast world. And I see you doing
Yeah.
that. I see you acknowledging and making that shift. I also think that there's something around the cultures that we work in about this need to go fast. We talk about the badge of busy and how being really busy is seen as a good thing, when actually being very slow and thoughtful could also be a good thing. Both of those things could be true.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
think the other thing around speed, where I see it play out, is in teams where there's a tension because some people are going really fast and other people are going slower. And being able to use this model as a way
Yeah.
to talk about some of this, I think I can see how that could be massively helpful.
Yeah. So one of the things I always caution people is it's absolutely fine to look at someone else's behavior and then anticipate what might be the thought processes and
Mm,
drivers that they are experiencing that drive this. But it's really important not to make an assumption that you've correctly identified those,
agreed.
which is why, as you said, talking about it with your team. So even just knowing this model and not talking about it, being able to think, oh, I wonder whether that's the thought process that's driving that behavior. That in itself is useful, but taking it to the next step of actually talking to your team around these five and being willing to share how things have shifted and changed for you over the years as well. This isn't just a static kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's probably where the real impact has
Yeah, I can.
kind of traction when you're thinking about the team
Yeah, I
dynamics.
can see how that can have real power. Definitely. Is
Mm,
there anything
yeah.
else that you want to tell us, Julia, about this fascinating model that's making my brain churn with different thoughts and ideas?
Yeah. So I think the last thing I want to say is, as with any model, it will help some people and other people it will leave them
Mm.
completely cold, and that's absolutely fine. To say, just like we talked about when we talked about introversion and extroversion, which was another recent episode we did, this isn't a label which you put on yourself and then it becomes a limiting belief. This is something which empowers your self-awareness. And then finally to say, if you find it hard to break through one of these, join the club. It's
Yeah,
not easy. And it probably is, it doesn't have to be, but it might be the work of a couple of years of just constantly reminding yourself and seeing the behaviors that you experience and how you might be able to shift and change those over time. And maybe working with other people,
yeah,
a coach or a trusted
yeah,
advisor, trusted peer, might speed up that
yeah.
process potentially.
And again, to talk
Mm.
to my people, am I pleasing others? It's a part of a toolkit. And some bits
Yeah,
of toolkit are relevant for some things and more helpful in some things, and some things are not. But you've got it in your toolkit as something that you may choose to use. And it may
yeah,
really resonate and work. It may not, but give it a go and see where you get to. Be curious and explore it.
exactly. We talked about that last week,
Yeah.
didn't we? Last time. Yes, be curious. Absolutely. Is there anything else, Lucy, that you wanted to add as we're wrapping up our time on this?
I think it's a fascinating model. I think some of the antidotes can be really helpful, like, those little reframes in your mind. Good enough is good enough. Um, am I pleasing myself here, or is this all about other people? Just some of those almost like shortcuts can be
Yeah.
really helpful in helping you take a step back and reflect. And for my personal learning is to focus in on being strong independent woman, but yeah, and need to make sure that I ask for help in different contexts where I need
Yeah.
it. So thank you, Juliet, for sharing.
You're very welcome. I'd love to hear feedback from anyone else who's found this either does resonate with them or left them a bit cold, and maybe there's something else that other questions that we can answer. Anyone who uses it with their team and finds that's a
Yeah.
useful conversation, let us know. We love to hear feedback, don't we,
Yeah,
Lucy?
definitely, because this isn't perfect, and um,
Yes.
we genuinely see, feedback as you helping us to, I'm going to go people pleasing, serve you.
Yes, and in fact, there's a form linked on our episode notes to our feedback form
Yeah,
if you want some structure, or if not, just ping
yeah,
us
just
an
get in
email.
touch.
Those details are on the notes as well. Yeah, fantastic. Right then, let's wrap
Yeah.
up here. Thank you for spending this time with us. I'm Juliet Corbett, an executive coach and strategist working one-to-one with senior
And
leaders.
I'm Lucy Gower, a recovered perfectionist, a facilitator, trainer, and coach helping leaders develop high performing teams. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with colleagues and help leverage the impact of a quiet leadership revolution.